Dimension W Season 1 Finale, The Future Reached. Now, I think this was a really cool season finale. It had some very interesting moments, specifically the loss of a very important character, but I really enjoyed this finale. I think it definitely did a good job. Starting off in the very beginning, they actually did exactly what I thought they might have done with Sophia's body, and it is made of the different people that actually died. So I thought it was cool that I was right about that. But it instantly starts off. They're right where things left off. They're facing this monster. Everyone's a little bit separated after the big explosion when they were actually inside the building. So Luai is actually looking for his brother. Kyoma and Mira are actually separated themselves. The brother and sister mole duo, they're separated as well. Although I guess they were with Salva as well, and Lashta or Lashta. I always forget how to pronounce her name because even how it's spelled, it's not exactly pronounced that way. But everyone's kind of split up. Seameyer is just going insane. I've got this giant monster. I'm totally safe over here. You guys suck. And then Loser takes him on. He's kind of the first defense against this guy, as well as Sophie in this form. And that was one of the sad things about it, is that not only did we lose Loser during that fight scene, but I was really hoping they'd actually defeat him and he'd be able to save his wife, because they made it even worse where he's like, oh, I didn't just destroy your wife. Basically, I ripped her apart, but I kept her hands and her heart beating. And I was like, that makes it even worse, what he had to kind of deal with emotionally. And I was just like, man, that really sucks. And I was hoping that it would be a nice, happy ending, at least for him, because I figured they wouldn't do that for Kyoma. I didn't think that he, everything would be perfect and like everyone, gets their wives. But the way they did it was different for both of them, because for Loser, he actually dies and he doesn't get to, bring his wife back. But with Kyoma, we actually find out that he made this sort of joint decision with Miyabi. And I thought that was actually very surprising. And we find out that when he's basically destroying Genesis, he's kind of pseudo-teleported to this really weird space where his connection to Miyabi is partly what caused the accident, but also her decision to not allow him to use it, because she knew that it could, what good it would do and what bad it would do based on what choices they made. So it's like ultimately they, chose together to destroy it, but of course he didn't remember that in the moment, so he was kind of just, hit with the fact that she's gone and the battle was really weird and crazy, and that's all he could remember. So I thought it was cool. It's like a crazy answer to all this lost time, and it wasn't just that he screwed up or something like that. And of course it was connected, which I think we all kind of figured it was connected. Like something weird happened here and we didn't know if I mentioned before, we didn't technically know if she was or wasn't on the island, or who knows where she was taken to. But fortunately nobody turned out to be bad, and they didn't like do that on purpose or anything. It was just a crazy thing that happened, and they made the decision together to destroy Genesis, despite what Kyoma could have done to save the woman that he loved. So I thought that was really cool. And they had a really great moment before that where Mira talks to him like, if it weren't for her passing, I wouldn't be here because my body was meant for her. And he takes her glove off and he mentions that the lines in her hands are even the same. And I thought that was actually really cool, that they had that level of detail in this, recreated body for this girl. And he knew, and this was like, crap, like, it gave him a deeper connection to Mira. So I thought that was actually really cool. And she kind of caught him at one point when they were like flying through the air and everything, and he's like, you should be glad you're alive. And she's like, did you say alive? So he realized he was caught, and he was like, crap. But it was definitely a fun finale. I really do hope we get a season 2. I think they did, despite what they concluded with, they of course did a great job leading into what's to come. I mean, there's still all this stuff about the secret organizations, who had Mira's family killed, who killed off both the doctors who initially set that up, any number of different issues that could come up from just coils in general that they could do, make any sort of new villain or something like that. We of course have the I want to say she was a general, either the commander or general, the woman that was on the ship, who is in 2 scenes, and she showed up again in this episode. I was like, oh, there she is. So I'm assuming she's one of the characters who probably have more of a role in the manga, and may or may not have more of a role after all the events that take place during this arc. But there's still some character development that we can definitely get, backstory on a lot of the other characters as well. Um, but I think they still did a good job. You know, Ellie is on her own at this point, and when they did the ending sequence, it kind of seemed like she was a little taller. I think it was just the way they did the angle, and they maybe drew her that way on purpose to make her seem taller because it kind of looked like she was a bit older. But I'm pretty sure it was like basically right after the events, you know, during the end title screen. But she's on her own now, but she still has a decision to make as to what she wants to do and how she wants to live her life now that she is, you know, completely alone, which is really sad. But, you know, there's definitely that. There's, of course, I think the biggest thing that could lead into the next season is exactly what happened with Mira at the end of this episode. And we get a great connection between this final episode and the very first episode where this green coil, or, you know, that's what I'm going to consider the green coil that the doctor made when he kind of seemingly just, you know, went crazy and killed himself. It turns out that he was in Dimension W, and maybe that's why he made it that way. He knew that if he was found, despite Mira's coil being fairly unique, because they mentioned that early on, it's like, oh, she had a unique coil, but it got destroyed. This is the coil that she's truly meant to have. So I guess he did that on purpose. Like, if I get caught, I have to use it and warp myself into Dimension W. And that's why I said follow the coils, and that way, you know, she would eventually be led to him because it will lead to the island, and it would lead to this weird interdimensional moment where he could, in a weird way, come back to life and hand off the coil to her that, you know, she was always meant to have. So I'm very excited to see where they take that. Um, he says something like, you know, listen, or, you know, learn people's hearts and stuff like that. And during the moment where Ellie's crying over Loser, she has what seems like a heartbeat. So I don't know if that was like her getting a heartbeat, like the coil actually is turning her into a human or something crazy like that. But it was something. It was clearly a lead into something. It's like, here's a little tease, and, you know, season finale. So I thought that was very cool. But I definitely enjoy season 2. We got, you know, it wasn't a lot of action, and there's not too much action, but it actually worked out pretty well. We got our final, you know, bit of memory from Kiyoma, and, you know, he realized everything, how it all played out. Sadly, Loser did get defeated. He was killed during the battle. At first, I thought he had a really epic moment. I was like, holy crap, you know, because of the fake arm thing. He made his own rift and stuff, and it, like, blew my mind when he did that. And then he, like, reaches through because it's like, I have a fake arm. This isn't going to hurt me. And he's grabbing Seameyer, and I thought it was going to go from there, and they'd still have to battle this monster, but he just, like, completely throws Seameyer off and just pull him from Dimension W, and they, you know, have him face to face. But unfortunately, it didn't work that way. I thought that would have been really amazing if it did, but he got distracted by, like, this gross, weird meat-looking version of his ex-wife, or of his wife, and, you know, unfortunately that distracted him enough, and it took him down. But, you know, despite the fact that he's gone, which I feel is so early, but I'm sure, you know, if I go through the manga, it would have taken much longer to get to this point. But it really sucks to see him go. It was a good character. He had a good backstory, and I feel like there was still so much even after this where he could have been a really useful character, like, you know, helping Ellie grow up and just dealing with the fact that he at least somewhat got his revenge. I think would have been cool to see that, you know, kind of the aftermath of that. But sadly, he didn't make it through this battle, so, you know, we lose him in this one, but we still have Ellie, who's now, you know, kind of going to take the forefront of his position. And we'll see where, you know, they take her character if the show does get a season 2. But I certainly enjoyed this. The bit of action that we did get, I enjoyed. It was actually pretty cool seeing, like, all the characters and what happened after everything took place. We had Prince Salva. He went to the people at New Tesla and everything. We got to see Steve Jobs again. And we had the little girl's grandmother. I can't remember her name, but, like, the head of, I think it's, like, the District 60 or whichever one it is. So we got to see her, and it's just a bunch of random things happening and people talking like this happened and that happened. So there are little hints as to what is to come for the series, but I'm looking forward to a season 2. I really hope we get one. I'd love to get some answers as to, you know, what happened with Mira, and I might start reading the manga in general, just because I enjoyed the anime so much. I might do that regardless of whether or not we get a season 2. I might end up doing it before the news is officially out, but I hope we get a season 2. I think this was a really good finale. Um, I'm curious. Another thing that they have is the stuff with KK from the last episode, or maybe or the episode before that, I believe, where he's like, somebody hired me, and that's still kind of up in the air. Like, was it other people from New Tesla, or was it another, brand new group that maybe is trying to hide something that, of course, didn't get discovered anyway, but it still might at this point, because now that all the crazy destruction is gone, people could go to that island freely, and who knows what could come of that in season 2 as well. If New Tesla decides, well, everything's fine, we could just fly in and survey the area, they could find all sorts of new secrets, and that could be another huge thing for season 2. But regardless of what they choose to pick for like the main arc of season 2, I definitely enjoyed this season. It was really fun. Great new anime. Definitely think I'm going to get into the manga now that I've finished the first season. I'll probably still start the manga from the beginning just to get all the extra stuff that wasn't put into the anime. But definitely enjoyed this series. Of course, I really want to know what you guys thought about this finale, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And with us being, of course, at the end of this season, I definitely want to know if you guys want a season 2, which is probably obvious if you got to the last episode. You probably want to see a second season, but what would you like to see in season 2? Like, they have all the hints and stuff. The main thing I'm looking forward to is definitely the stuff with Mira, because it was a surprising connection that I never expected. I figured he made this coil as like a crazy, like, ultimate way to wipe out anything that they could get out of him. And then it turns out it's like just the craziest connection. I don't think I've ever seen that, where an anime did something in the first episode and it skips everything in between. It's like, finale, this totally makes sense now. So he passes off the green coil through Dimension W, and seemingly the Doctor was kind of okay with Seameyer despite what he'd done. He just puts his hand on Seameyer, and that's really it. He doesn't say anything to him, and initially I thought that's all that was going to happen, but he actually speaks to Mira. So he could have said something, but he just put his hand on his head, and it calmed Seameyer down, who had a million different expressions in this episode, because normally he just had the sly look, but he had surprise and anger, and then the end he was flipping out like crazy, and his arms were moving all weird when they had like the projection thing on him. So he had like every form of animation and facial expression he could have. Especially, and it was so weird seeing it compared to every other episode where he's either doing the sly evil villain laugh, or the grin, or just doing like a simple version of looking angry where he just kind of squints a little bit. But this was like every range of expression they could have done, they did to Seameyer for this episode, which is pretty good. It shows just how crazy it was, where he's shocked and he's laughing at them and he's angry and then he's flipping out because he's scared. And then we got him just like calmly accepting his fate, at the end. But a lot to look forward to, I think, and probably a lot of stuff that they'll just pick from the manga that we haven't seen or wasn't even remotely introduced for this season. So definitely looking forward to a volume 2 or season 2, I guess. And I'm definitely gonna check out the manga for sure, because I think it's a lot of cool stuff that we probably didn't get in the anime that I'd really like to see. I'd love to see if there are more action scenes as well, because I feel like one thing that this anime didn't do this season was have enough action scenes, to be totally honest. They had like, and even in this episode I thought there would be more action, because they're facing this giant creature, and it was kind of perfect because they have all these different people. It could have been a crazy epic battle and stuff, or they get answers as they're fighting, but ultimately it was still kind of a talky episode. That was like the only thing that kind of disappointed me. I was hoping for like a really big battle, and I mentioned that before because they have these characters, specifically in Kyoma, but they also had Loser in this one as well. And it's like, these are people that can do like nearly impossible stuff. Kyoma, just for whatever reason, has super strength basically, and Loser can do whatever because he's a mostly robot. So they have the potential, but they don't really use it as far as action. And I know it's not really just an action anime, but it seems like they skip over a lot of good action that they could have. And I still enjoy the show regardless, because they did a great job building up mysteries and who may have done what and how it all works and how it fits together, especially with a great season-long mystery as far as who Kyoma is and why he doesn't use coils, and what happened on the island once that got introduced around like episode 3 or 4. So definitely did a great job with it, but there's still so much where it's like, man, they could really do way more like just epic action scenes. We had like one really, and that was against KK. And everything else I feel like kind of got glossed over. The first action scene was kind of like the little glimpses of Kiyoma, like knocking those guys out when Mira was fainting. And that was really it. So I would like to see a bit more action in Volume 2, but ultimately it didn't take anything away from that. I mean, I just kind of wish we got more scenes because, you know, like the fight with Loser and the superhero guy, that had to have been an epic fight. That guy had a number. And they, like, skipped that whole fight, and then the next episode starts, and it's like, Loser won. And then that was it. And it was just like, man, that kind of sucks that they skipped over what was seemingly going to be a really epic fight. And it was just like, nope, story, 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 and, you know, not enough just action during some of the episodes. Just at least where I felt like it could have fit. I didn't think they needed to throw in any extra fights, but when it definitely seemed like there should have been an epic fight and they skipped over it, that did disappoint me a little bit. But overall, certainly loved the season. I'm definitely excited to read the manga whenever I end up having the chance to do that. But like I said, I definitely want to know what you guys want. Whoops. I definitely want to know what you guys want from a season 2. Definitely want to know your favorite parts and least favorite parts. Not just from the finale, but the season as a whole, like your favorite episode out of the season. Maybe your least favorite episode as well, if one of them just didn't really click for you. I would love to know that. For me personally, I would definitely have to say Kiyoma's backstory, which was episode 7. And as I mentioned before, for me that was the first episode because I definitely screwed up and I didn't realize I was watching episode 7. But I did. I watched episode 7 and I totally screwed myself over. But fortunately, that was definitely a standalone episode because it was kind of an in between. It was like, here's backstory, really important backstory, which I got super early. But here's really cool backstory for Kiyoma, why he doesn't use coils, everything that happened, and then them going to the island and stuff. So that was definitely one of my favorites. I really like the Lake Yasagami thing because it's a horror sort of theme. And I think that really was the best use out of every episode, aside from the last couple, because that's where everything was like, this is exactly what Dimension W can do. I think that was probably the best example before all the answers were given as to how Dimension W works and how it can basically create parallel dimensions where some people exist and some people don't, and how one version of a ghost actually exists because a girl survived. And there's like, you know, just like, it was just crazy. It was like this ghost exists because in his mind he created a world where none of them made it, and so he kind of lost it. And then in reality he didn't make it and the girl did, so it was just like a lot of crazy stuff. Still slightly confusing, as I mentioned during that review. It was like, this exists and this happened but this didn't happen, but he thought it did, and that's why the ghost exists. All this crazy stuff, but I thought that was a really, really perfect use of Dimension W. It even created a horror theme within a sci-fi sort of action anime. So it was just really interesting that they could even go that route, and then it took it to a next level because it showed us so much of what Dimension W can do. So those were 2 really great episodes. Plus, Kiyoma kicked his buddy out of a window. I can't think of the guy's name right now, but he kicked him out of a window from 3 stories up, and it was just like, well, I'm gonna land in my sandals and just walk off. He was also dressed weird. I think I mentioned that before, but he was dressed like he was on the beach that whole time. He's got like a lay-on in sandals and shorts, and they're like this little, like, dim, you know, resort, or, you know, not even a resort, but they're on this hotel on the lake, and he's dressed like he's on the beach, which I thought was really silly. But those are definitely my 3 favorite: the Lake Yasagami 2-part episodes, and the backstory for sure. But definitely want to know yours and what you thought about this episode and the season in general. And like I said, definitely want to know what storyline you guys want to see most from Dimension W Season 2, whether you've read the manga or not. Definitely want to know your thoughts on that, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.